Year 1607. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth stands at a crossroads. For 7 years, a war with the Swedes has raged over the wealth flowing from Baltic trade. Additionally, for the past 3 years, there has been a war with Russia, in which part of the Polish nobility attempted to place their puppet on the Russian throne. If both conflicts were to end in success, the Commonwealth would become the greatest European empire. Unfortunately, thanks to Sigmund III Vasa, this did not happen. However, in today's episode, I will step into the shoes of this Polish ruler and try to win both these conflicts, despite the Swedish army being more battle-hardened and the Russian forces more numerous. Meanwhile, within Poland itself, the Sandomir's rebellion is in full swing and the treasury is empty. This won't be an easy game. Welcome, imperialists, Lookas here. Preparations. Before embarking on these wars, I must prepare the Commonwealth for them, because this is not an easy campaign. I no longer have those really cool earlier Polish missions, the current ones are essentially useless to me. I also don't have any helpful national decisions, well, except maybe this one. I'm technologically backward and don't really have a chance to catch up quickly. Nevertheless, I switch my national focus to military one. I'll also hire a military advisor, but let's be honest, I'll be hunting for one with discipline bonuses eventually. I'm getting rid of surplus commanders, unfortunately Jan Sapieha is out, and I also have to bid farewell to Stanisław Lubomirski. I distribute privileges to the estates, for the clergy everything that increases their influence to boost tax revenue. But most importantly, the 5% morale bonus against heretics. Russia is Orthodox and Sweden is Protestant, so this will come in handy. The majority of initial privileges go to the nobility, an extra military point, cheaper advisors, more loyal vassals, and of course golden liberty from the start, as well as cheaper fortifications and army maintenance. For the burghers, privileges for cheaper advisors, loans, increased prestige, remember, prestige affects a lot of modifiers, extra taxes, and reduced state maintenance costs with lower interest rates. I also leave room to control monetary policy, it might come in handy, I have a hunch. I decided to complete the mission to improve relations with Spain, so I can ally with them. What? I didn't see that coming. With borrowed money, I purchased the Defender of the Faith title, mainly for the extra morale, but there's also a modifier here that increases my manpower. In provinces with fortresses, I activate defensive edicts. I have no choice but to delay the advance of Russian forces as much as possible along the entire border. The Russian armies are so numerous that they'll besiege every available fortress. As Poland, I also have a massive gap in my defense, but I'll just have to live with it. In all other territories, I initiate additional conscription, which gives me a solid manpower boost. I also send diplomats to Russia to build a spy network there. Russia in this mod has tons of fortresses I'll have to capture, especially since the Russian capital is still in Moscow. I send a spy to Sweden as well. I assign my ruler to the army in Kalisz and order all my vassals to join them. To make this easier, I instruct them to adopt the tactic of attaching to my battles. Some Russian fortresses are in the Kiev trade node, so switching my trade policy to gathering information about those fortresses will be crucial. Unfortunately, I don't think I can deploy my merchants more effectively than I already have. The remaining manpower is used to recruit winged hussars. They are incredibly effective and will certainly prove useful. I also need as many cannons as possible, at least 10. I assign my best remaining commanders to the armies about to engage in battle. Finally, I increase recruitment even further, boosting monthly manpower gains to impressive levels. Let's go! The worst part is that despite having so many opponents, I still need to crush the 62,000 unnecessary rebels from the Sandomir's rebellion because the king decided to consolidate power at the worst possible moment. Even though my enemies were supposed to take a beating here, I still suffered additional losses due to bad luck. Meanwhile, dark clouds gather over the empire as Protestant and Catholic leagues form. This means Germany will soon erupt into a bloody war, which is actually good for me since my armies are busy and beating these rebels is no small task. I'm already taking massive losses because of bad rolls. The first battle is won. After battles, I immediately consolidate the infantry. The second battle is won. Meanwhile, Russian forces are approaching my border. Jesus, there's a lot of them here. XD! My ruler has died. Well, I was hoping he'd fall in battle, which is why I assigned him to the army, but I didn't expect it to happen so early. This simplifies many things significantly. August II Vasa has ascended to the throne, but since Paradox introduced elective monarchy mechanics, a new heir is always rolled when you start the game. I rush to relieve Lublin and break the remaining rebel forces. After winning, I consolidate my armies again and wait for the cavalry and artillery to be recruited. Army composition: 14,000 cannons, 10,000 cavalry, including 5,000 juicy hussars, and 19,000 infantry. I send this force first to Kiev, where I'll engage the Russians. In the north, their armies are more scattered, but have significant support. The main offensive force will be commanded by Jan Karol Chodkiewicz, with Żukiewski providing backup. For now, I must avoid engagements with the Swedes entirely. A small army, but could cost me all my manpower reserves. The first charge of the Polish hussars, and no, I don't break the enemy because they have an overpowered commander. Where did they get him? But in the end, I defeat this army. I hire an advisor for morale bonuses for now since I don't have anyone better, and I keep attacking, consolidating after each engagement. In this battle I have more discipline, but morale is very similar to the Russians. And casualties are also very comparable at the moment, not great, not great. Ultimately though, the Russians retreat and I consolidate my infantry again. To replace the fallen infantry, I recruit mercenaries, specifically Lithuanian ones. What makes me happy? The Russian armies in the north have scattered somewhat. I'll try to attack them individually. At the same time, Zhukievsky's army will secure the territory to make it harder for them to besiege, implementing a scorched earth policy. No, I'm not kidding. Look, I've got the trophy. This is Iron Man mode. I receive a military reform. I think this event could significantly ease this war for me. Taking advantage of poorly led Russian forces, I crush them on my territory, causing massive casualties. Buoyed by these victories over Russia, I decide to attack the Swedes and push them back from the Riga fortress. But looking at the quality of their army, this was probably a mistake, especially after looking at tactics. And indeed, I suffer massive losses in this battle. Though luck is on my side, as the Swedish forces seem to have encountered my hussars and are being completely routed.
Wow.
After the defeat near Riga, the Swedish forces retreat to Reval, so I think I'll catch their army there. Will this allow me to crush them? Yes, it will let me utterly crush the Swedish army. I have to seize this moment, so I begin bombarding the fortress. I leave only 10 cannons for the siege, while the rest of my army moves away from the fortress. I must admit that after the first year of struggles, it's November 11th, 1608, the situation doesn't look too bad. Well, apart from the financial sphere, where I'm 1,600 gold in debt. But the Swedish forces have been shattered, I'm besieging the fortress, which is the goal of this war. The Russian forces have retreated somewhere and are likely regrouping. This isn't over yet, there are still 112,000 troops somewhere. While besieging the fortress at Reval, I keep my forces on my own territory so reinforcements arrive faster. The hussars recover more slowly anyway. The fortress soon fell, and I could start picking off smaller Russian armies. Or rather, armies of their allies. Krivoy Rog has fallen. Since the fortress at Lubny is holding strong, I had to support the defenders. For some reason, the Russian forces decided to retreat from the battle. Oh, because they'll intercept my cannons. That's not good. Maybe I'll take another route. Alright, Stanisław Żółkiewski rather unfortunately initiated a battle in the marshes. This isn't great when you rely heavily on cavalry, and this army has quite a bit of it. Which caused unnecessary heavy losses. But near Kovno, I think I've caught the Russians, and the battle should go completely in my favor. Yes, looking at the shock phase, where my cavalry hits hardest, it inflicts enormous losses on the Russians. The fire phase is a bit worse, but thanks to artillery superiority, I'm still dealing some damage. But it's the shock phase where I cause massive losses to the Russians. Next, I move towards Kiev, where a 19,000 strong Russian army without a commander is stationed. This could be a great opportunity to deal truly enormous losses to the Russians, from which they won't recover. Yes, I'm crushing the Russians beautifully, just beautifully. And during the shock phase, my losses are minimal. They're simply being annihilated. I even destroyed their entire army. Then, near Lubny, the Russians withdrew their commander just before my arrival, only to crash into me and lose their entire army. Another army down. All I have left to do is bombard and storm the fortress. Thanks to these victories, my army is now numerically superior to the Russian army. Although they still have far greater manpower reserves. They can theoretically field an army 3 times the size of mine. Wow, I've caught their army again, destroying yet another. Could it be another stack wipe? Oh, unfortunately not. But their artillery moved to the front line. Look at the losses. And yet another army smashed again near Lubny. This puts the Russian army in disarray and their war enthusiasm is now very low. In theory, I should now advance into Russian territory, which I'll probably do. But upon closer inspection, there's a mighty level 4 fortress in Smolensk, then the same in Vyazma and Mojaisk. After that, I'd have to take a level 5 fortress in Moscow to secure my war goal. These are excellent fortresses and they'd be tough to capture. So I'll take another route. Through Pskov, Luki, Novgorod and approach Moscow from the rear. I'm besieging the fortress at Luki with the maximum number of cannons, which should speed up the siege progress as much as possible. I could really use a commander with a siege bonus here, like the one I got rid of earlier. Oh well. Unfortunately, the fortress at Luki was reluctant to fall, which was problematic. I also had several outbreaks of plague here, depleting my manpower reserves. At this point, I had recaptured all my territories except Zaporizhia. I focused on breaking up smaller Russian armies since Russia could no longer field a large army like before, only smaller detachments. Okay, I can unlock level 15 technology, I'll take it immediately. But I won't yet upgrade my unit types to modern ones because I need to win some battles near Lubny first. Wow! I utterly destroyed the entire army of those Muscovite vassals while suffering almost no losses. Then I immediately switched to the newer unit type, Soldat Infantry. During the siege of Pskov I got lucky and managed to breach the fortress walls. Unfortunately, my spy network was detected, which will slow down future sieges. Currently, it's only 8%. To save money, I'll transfer the occupation of fortresses to Kurland. Hey, why aren't the Prussians in this war? What happened here? Pskov has fallen, now I'm moving on to Ingermanland. Although I see that much of the Russian army is gathering in the south, I'll consolidate the rest of my forces and try to defeat them in upcoming battles. And I'm heading to relieve Kiev. At this point, I'm utterly crushing the Russian army. They're falling like water. You know what? I'm heading straight for Lubny. Most of the Russian army seems to be there. Well, almost. I'm curious if I can break these combined forces now. So far, I'm losing in the shock phase. But that's because Nogai is a horde and gets a bonus in this phase. Oh no! This battle is very unfortunate, causing significant losses. Fortunately, the Russians retreated, though I didn't break their forces. That was a foolish battle. After 115 days of siege, Ingermanland fell. Now it's time for Novgorod. After Novgorod, the road to Moscow will finally be open. This means I've outnumbered the Muscovites, who aren't even recruiting new armies. Could they be facing economic problems? Their income is twice mine. How strange they have such a small army. Novgorod fell after 115 days as well, without me doing anything special. The road to Moscow is open now. The problem is that this fortress will take a long time to besiege, especially with all these modifiers, 57%. And Russia still has Lucky Nation status? Really? Of course, it was too easy. At this point, I decided to move all my armies to Moscow to support the siege. Unfortunately, I'll lose the fortress at Lubny. There are too many forces stationed there and I don't want to engage them again. Without hesitation, I bombard the fortress at Moscow. Unfortunately, I don't have the maximum siege bonus here, so this will take some time. Progress is excruciatingly slow, 41 days per advancement. Meanwhile, a full-scale religious war has erupted in the empire. Of course, this means I have to grant access to a lot of countries, or maybe not. Deal with it yourselves. Bye! Ooh, that's quite a lot. So I'm heading back with my army. Somehow, I managed not only to capture Moscow, but to thoroughly plunder it. Of course, I don't want to completely devastate it, since I need to maintain this country as my personal union later. So I settled for disciplined minor looting of Moscow. Additionally, I ended the war with the Swedes at this point. I gained Kurland as I wanted, along with war reparations and some money from them. Now I have to fight a battle near Kiev to defend that fortress, and I think I'll manage. Wow, they suffered nearly 3,000 casualties in a single tick. Yes, I'm utterly crushing their armies again, especially since they had no artillery in this army. Next, I strike at the fortress in Podole, where I once again inflict significant losses, completely destroying the Russian army again. I can't believe it. I think I should be playing this scenario as Russia. It seems that way to me. I'll defend the capital, but that's just a minor detail. Then I'll move on to destroy more Russian armies. Another army destroyed. The biggest enemy of Poland, rebellions. This time, I think I'll sacrifice stability. Unfortunately, the great Polish general Stanisław Żółkiewski has died. Oh no, Moscow is about to fall. Alright, storm it immediately. And I managed to arrive with reinforcements for my garrison in Moscow, where I caught their army. I inflicted tenfold more casualties than I suffered. Did I just destroy another army? How? Oh my god, taking these remaining territories in Russia will be quite the challenge. I could already win this war, but I want Russia to suffer financially as well, since this war has cost me greatly. Alright, I can't take much more from Russia anyway. Taking those additional fortresses would be a nightmare anyway. So I establish a personal union over this country, which costs me significant aggressive expansion. But since it's an Orthodox country, nobody cares. 121,000 to 400,000 losses for the Russian forces, and basically I only lost 52,000 in battles, which is very little. Okay. Improving these relations is going to be quite a challenge. The war for Russia is behind me, but in reality, this is only part of the journey because now this country must be maintained under this personal union. After all, historically Zygmunt III Vaza also placed his son on the throne of Russia, but it ended very quickly. So here's the current state of Poland. To sustain such a gigantic country, which in terms of development is twice the size of Poland, the Commonwealth would have quite a lot of work to do. First, I am sending diplomats to improve relations with my vassals and to build influence with my Spanish ally. The last diplomat will focus on improving relations with Russia. I'll also take advantage of national decisions, such as those reducing construction or army maintenance costs. But my main task now is to reduce expenses. That's why I'm turning off all edicts everywhere. They are no longer useful, especially since I have very low manpower growth, and this alone has halved my provincial maintenance costs. I'm hiring level 1 advisors since I can afford them, unless I find cheaper ones, like in this case, a trader who will pay off anyway. I won't embrace the institution yet as it costs 1,500 gold. I'll regroup my army in Warsaw to figure out a plan since it's currently my largest expense. The only thing I'll do immediately is lower its maintenance. I'll also dismantle forts. I'm not in such a massive deficit anymore, if only it weren't for those raids, right? I seized and sold land and I took a burger mission to build a workshop since there was nothing better available. I'm buying a blessing from the Pope, which might be useful later. With an influence growth of 11 points with the Pope, I'll be able to get a privilege in a year, which will reduce construction costs further. I should also mention that I have 15 years to establish better relations with Russia and turn it into a loyal state under the Commonwealth. So, I don't have to rush too much. This requires achieving at least +1 relations, though the higher, the better. Currently, with all the modifiers, this will be difficult. Secondly, I need to reduce their liberty desire below 50%, which will also be challenging due to their stronger army and economy. I think I can solve both problems simultaneously. I'm moving my trade focus to the Baltic region as my main one. I enforce trade transfer agreements on my vassals. Same for Kurland, which increases my share to 47%. Not much. Now, I'll focus on upgrading all trade centers to higher levels and prioritizing trade buildings in these areas. I'll do the same everywhere. At the moment, it's not worth activating edicts that boost trade power. After all these actions, I'm now earning nearly 20 gold. Amazing! I'm separating mercenaries from the army because surprisingly I want to keep them. Finally, I'm reorganizing my army. I'm keeping only the infantry, hussars and artillery while disbanding standard cavalry, which gives me 2 gold already. I'll also disable forts, which will push me further into surplus. Despite this, I am implementing a strategy you haven't seen on my channel for a long time, the so-called bankrupt building strategy. This involves building as much as possible, maxing out my infrastructure and then declaring bankruptcy, which should leave all buildings intact. But it must be done correctly. First, I'll construct buildings that are completed quickly, like trade buildings. Next, I'll build workshops everywhere. I'm distributing policies, which will be useful. For instance, I have a policy to improve relations, which helps reduce aggressive expansion faster. I'm swapping offensive ideas for aristocratic ones, as these will be cheaper to develop. However, I'll prioritize tech advancements first. I'm introducing additional church taxes as well. And I'm lowering autonomy everywhere. Totally forgot about that. I'm taking out several loans to pay off my 1% interest loans. After upgrading trade buildings, I'll activate edicts, which now make sense and further boost trade power. I'm taking 5% loans again, giving me more funds. Surprisingly, I'm also taking control of monetary policy to reduce debt maintenance costs. Next, I'll invest in production buildings in every province. If I run out of money, I'll take more loans, especially since my loan limit has increased. Although I'm running a deficit, this is not an issue since I'm repaying all debt with new loans. Interestingly, just building workshops has already increased my income significantly. I could build some churches now, but it's not worth it in the long run. Next, I'll start building manufactories, though not everywhere. This will require more loans. Manufactories take a long time to construct, and I'll need to survive 5 years after the last one is built. I ended up with 74 loans and 21,000 gold in debt. If you've made it this far, write Lookas equals Girek in the comments and I'll leave you a heart. More loans are only taken to repay older debt. At this point, I'm focusing on increasing trust with Spain and finding other strong allies. I also built the Zamoyski Academy. The age of absolutism has begun. This will be fun. I'll curry favors with the Russians to build trust, improving their loyalty. I'll suppress uprisings as they occur. Wait, there's paper in Warsaw? Seriously? Since when? Using diplomatic points, I'll develop provinces, increasing production but falling behind in diplomatic technology. Currently, my maximum relation with Russia is -8, but with my diplomat stationed there, it'll improve next year. Once relations are positive, the union will hold even if my ruler dies. However, the union remains highly disloyal. I'm correcting Poland's greatest historical mistake by annexing Prussia. Manufactories are almost finished and now, many would declare bankruptcy, but that would be a mistake. I'll have to wait 5 years. If I bankrupt now, I'll lose all the buildings I've constructed. I need to wait until December 1626 before bankrupting. Without building anything, in the meantime, I'll run on speed 5. I'll increase the army, focusing only on manpower-based infantry since it's the cheapest option. I can check some missions if I can do something. In the meantime, the religious war in the Holy Roman Empire has ended in a white peace, establishing religious tolerance. I'm also developing Russian provinces where it's cheapest, quickly making them loyal. I'll support royal loyalists despite the cost, as it offers hope. Prussia has been integrated and I've successfully made Russia loyal, though this is still tricky. Interestingly, loyal Russia is significantly reducing its army. Not sure why, but this always happens. They seem to have minor financial troubles with 18 gold in interest payments, not comparable to us. I've allied with the Habsburgs, fearing only the Ottoman Empire due to their large armies and decent technology. They covered many of my provinces. Finally, December 1626 has arrived. I'm spending all my monarchy points to avoid losing them. It's best to spend it on Russia. I've maxed out ideas, raised all forts and prepared my army. And finally, I declared bankruptcy. Look at these negative modifiers. Ugh, I hate this. I forgot my trade centers would be destroyed. Oh well, bankruptcy happened. But now I'm in a massive surplus. Russia is slightly more disloyal, but 22% is manageable. My allies haven't broken alliances despite the bankruptcy penalties. Now I just need to survive the next 5 years. The Commonwealth is packed with workshops, the most profitable manufactories are built, and I have a decent-sized army. A civil war looms. The biggest issue is that every province has 10% devastation, killing all prosperity progress. This is why I left the forts enabled. They automatically reduce devastation. I'm rehiring advisors, no cheaper options this time. I'll also build forts in gaps. My truce with Russia has ended, but they remain loyal for now, so there's no threat of war. I'm increasing ruler legitimacy with military points to avoid the civil war. Oh, a Janissary coup in the Ottoman Empire. Lucky me! After 5 years, bankruptcy ends and I'm earning 85 gold cleanly. Through war and economic reform, I've tripled the Commonwealth's profits. Of course, there's still work to be done. We currently have one of the strongest economies in the world. I don't have much of an army yet, but I'd still work on that, especially since I have many trade centers to rebuild. Still, the Commonwealth is now the third most powerful country in the world. What a beautiful story that would be. Perhaps as good as the reconstruction of the Spanish colonial empire, where I had to rebuild the strength of continental Spain itself, create my own bloc of great powers, and as a result, I gained a significant number of vassal states, from which I draw tremendous profits.